Undercover videos produced by discredited conservative activist James O'Keefe suggest it was Democratic operatives hired political activists working in coordination with the DNC to instigate violence and incite reactions at Trump rallies.
To truly understand this story, we need to go all the way back to 2016, give or take, at a Trump rally where there was a certain act of alleged violence against a certain individual named Shirley Teter, who was 69 years old at the time, a very sympathetic victim at that, and this is what is alleged to have occurred at the time.
According to numerous news stories at the time, she was assaulted at a Trump rally in North Carolina by Trump supporter Richard Campbell.
Project Veritas went undercover and got video footage of people admitting, people proudly boasting to working directly with the DNC, orchestrating these types of events at any Trump rally, getting these people who they referred to as bird dogs to get people provoked, to strike them, to do whatever, making the connection to Shirley Teter that she might have been the bird dog.
She was one of our activists.
She was one of your activists
who had been trained up to bird dogs. You have to start back with people 2 weeks ahead of time and train them how to ask questions.
Right.
You have to train them to bird dogs.
Well, Shirley Teter didn't much like this reporting, so she decided to sue Project Veritas for defamation and other reasons.
You may recall Shirley Teter was the person in the Democracy Partners investigation where Scott Fovel said that she was potentially one of their bird doggers. Now, just yesterday, the Wall Street Journal tweeted out that Shirley Teter filed a complaint against us, a lawsuit against us. Again, we didn't say these things about Shirley Teter. Scott Fovel did. But in this letter, Shirley Teter demands that, and I'm going to read the letter, a formal request that James O'Keefe retract all these untrue and false statements. I don't know why she's asking this of me. I didn't make the statements. She says that we must issue a formal apology to Ms. Teter, and we must contact every single TV station and every single media outlet that played the clip. So one of the things that they asked me in the deposition, as I was testifying, was what about this so-called scene change, where you're filming Fovel making these statements and then you cut to another scene? And we always get attacked for editing. I think it's just BS, but this one transition they would keep focusing on. Remember this woman? Her name is Shirley Teter. She is a 69-year-old sufferer of COPD.
She was one of our activists.
She was one of your activists
who had been trained up to bird dogs.
This is a clipped video. This is clipped and sliced. They chose where to put the content.
Fovel was unknowingly recorded by O'Keefe, who produces controversial undercover videos. What's unclear is who Fovel is referring to in that video, Shirley Teter or someone else.
Your Honor, you've called it an interview, and I may have slipped and called it that as well. This was taped at a bar in different places where the person did not know that they were being interviewed.
He knew. I believe that the First Amendment implications also extend to a greater degree in a case like this. The free exchange of ideas requires a very broad latitude for the media, particularly on issues of great public importance. And at the top of the list would be an issue regarding who should be elected as our president.
The judge who dismissed the lawsuit before it even got to the jury was appointed by George W. Bush, presumably a conservative judge appointed by a Republican George W. Bush, dismissing a lawsuit based on a directed verdict. I can understand how both sides are going to view this outcome, but I do not interpret this situation through political blinders. I leave that to you.
In the discovery process of a trial, there's something called the deposition, where these people put you in a room. In my case, there were 4 of these attorneys in this room with me, asking me these questions, and you're under oath.
Was Shirley Teter a bird dogger?
I can only speak to what Scott Fovel said about Ms. Teter.
We were reporting what we were learning from him, we were reporting what he was telling us.
Are you familiar with the practice of journalists giving a subject of one of their stories the opportunity to respond?
My duty as a journalist is to report accurately what people tell me. That is the extent to my duty.
Exhibit 31 seems like a draft letter under Project Veritas letterhead.
This is what we would refer to as a direct mail, letter.
You were trying to use Bob Kramer's lawsuit as a vehicle for soliciting donations? You mentioned the $1 million lawsuit to try to get donations, right?
I don't think that these lawsuits are generating any type of revenue for Project Veritas.
It probably affects us in a positive way because we're raising more funds. A federal judge, a guy named Martin Reitinger, he just decided to put the brakes on. He decided to just shock everyone and issue this ruling that would make First Amendment history. And the judge had to hear arguments for something called a Rule 50. Now, I'd never heard of a Rule 50 before. I didn't even know what it was. Apparently, it's an opportunity for the judge to throw out the case before it goes to jury verdict.
O'Keefe says the judge's decision to dismiss the case, the first to reach a jury trial, was vindication after years of attacks. He believes the Teter case was another example of political opponents unsuccessfully trying to use the courts to keep him quiet.
The public's right to know was on trial. It just felt like justice to hear a federal judge make the case that I've been making. A federal judge, constitutionally appointed federal judge, saying what I'm feeling. He's articulating what's in my heart, but saying it in a way that is more profound.
I realize Mike Wallace is dead, but I think about in terms of, well, if Mike Wallace did that, could someone have sued him?
Some questions remain unanswered, including what organizations are paying Mr. Sasser's bill. Mr. Sasser's rush to assure the court that certain political organizations are not involved begs the question of whether some other organization was involved.
The lawsuits are politically motivated in an attempt to break our will with lawyers who are politically connected.
The judge saying in court, how do you staff a trial with 4 out-of-state or out-of-town attorneys? How do you do that and then turn around and come back and say, well, the plaintiff is indigent? This is the sunlight. This is the accountability that you seek at Project Veritas. Reporting from Raleigh, North Carolina, this is James O'Keefe. This is an attack on the First Amendment and the press in general. By people who politically disagree with us, and we will be victorious.
Joining us tonight to talk about this, of course, is the man himself, Mr. James O'Keefe.
Let me just tell you a story. Way back when, I received a letter from Planned Parenthood. I did the Acorn story with Andrew Breitbart, Hannah Giles. I was arrested by the FBI in January of 2010. I spent 3 years on federal probation. And it is while I was on federal probation that I founded Project Veritas. I was sent criminal grand jury subpoenas by the state of New Hampshire in 2011, 2012 for exposés in New Hampshire. I was sued countless times for defamation, including one by Shirley Teter. I won that in federal district court at jury verdict. Jury verdict in North Carolina. None of you knew this. It was like a jury verdict. Woman sues me for defamation for quoting. We quoted Scott Fogle. And Scott Fogle is saying what he said. And they sued me. I don't know why they're suing me. They should sue Scott Fogle. Right before the verdict, the jury's coming out of the box, and the federal judge gavels the case and goes, can someone please tell me why we're here? The plaintiff's lawyers, these are like the Hillary Clinton lawyers. I don't know how this old woman could afford like 5 lawyers. So sometimes you have to fight it all the way to the end.
Did you win legal fees?
It took... Last year, we won back $15,000.